I greet you with grace and peace, and I welcome you to Stanford Memorial Church as we remember, honor, and celebrate the life of Joel Clinton Peterson. We gather this day bound amid our loss by our deep gratitude and love that each of us brings this day for Joel. Remembering a life that was at once expansive in reach and deeply personal in impact. Joel's life and business unfolded not simply as a career, but as a sustained and thoughtful practice of leadership. Known for his strategic insight and ethical clarity, he embodied a sense of vocation as a life of consecrated work. Shaped by his family's values of diligence and gratitude, he led with a deep sense of responsibility, a steady generosity of spirit, and a genuine interest in others. But more than the sum of his professional accolades, Joel was also, and perhaps more importantly, a beloved son and brother, a loving husband, a devoted father, grandfather, great-grandfather. He built a life that was marked by intention, joy, faith, and connection, welcoming others into that life with warmth and care. It is good and right that we gather here at the heart of Stanford, a place that Joel loved so dearly and to which he gave so much of his life. For decades, this campus was where he taught and mentored, shaping generations of students and forming a community that extends far beyond these walls. And so we come this day to honor not simply what Joel did, but who he was and is for us gathered here and for the countless lives he changed. Each of us gathers here this day bearing memories of the ways in which he touched our lives, both personally and professionally. And so through remembrances, we will bring those memories to mind and allow them a sacred space in our heart. So come, let us remember, let us honor, let us celebrate the life of Joel Clinton Peterson.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we gather in this beautiful church this morning to celebrate and remember the life of Joel Peterson. We are grateful for the peace and comfort that we have felt since his passing. We're grateful for the time that we had with him on this earth. And we are grateful for all of the ways that he inspired us to think more deeply and seek truth and live a more meaningful life. As we listen to memories and people pay tribute to him, may we recognize the ripple effect that one life can have on so many, and may we be inspired by the wisdom that he shared with us. Help us in this beautiful church to feel a sense of peace, and bless this gathering that we may honor the man who loved this university so much and gave so much to this community. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Morning. It's an honor to be here with you to celebrate the life of my friend Joel Peterson. Joel taught at the Stanford Graduate School of Business for 33 years. That's where I came to know him. And when I think of Joel, I remember him first as a devoted teacher. Joel's success in the classroom was no accident. He approached teaching with intention, and that showed up in his preparation, in his teaching, and in the way he related to his students. It was easy to spot Joel headed to class because he often wore a suit and tie. Remember, this is Stanford, where pants qualify as formal, so that was distinctive. Joel's dedication to his students was extraordinary. He was famous for being a generous listener and for making students and everyone that he spoke with feel as if he had all the time in the world. He mentored many students long after graduation, and he put more than a few of the entrepreneurs into business. When I would travel around to meet alumni, Joel was consistently one of the faculty members whose influence they remembered most vividly. Part of Joel's success as a teacher was the way he brought his own life into teaching. He talked about different chapters of his career, about his family. He was exceptionally proud of his family. He was very open about the hard parts of his career, for instance, his departure from Trammell Crow, and that endeared him to students. Most of all, Joel was deeply principled, and that was true in his teaching and in his business career and in his life. He had a principled view of leadership. He believed in building organizations based on respect and teamwork and a shared sense of purpose. He taught that leaders needed to earn trust, and you did that by making promises and then keeping them. Joel sometimes contrasted his teaching with Jeff Pfeffer's class on power, which was highly practical in assessing how people rose to leadership. It was a gift for students at the GSB to hear different perspectives from master teachers. I first got to know Joel through his teaching and then through serving with him on the search committee for a Hoover Institution director. Joel was the chair of the Hoover Board of Overseers, and we appointed Condoleezza Rice. So that was a very successful search. However, my relationship with Joel became deepest after what was almost certainly the most unhappy period of his GSB career. During the pandemic, a group of students in his class, it was being taught on Zoom, which you may have heard of what were responsible for this, were critical of what they perceived to be his failure to adapt to modern thinking about workplace diversity. Joel, who prided himself on treating everyone with fairness and with respect, was deeply wounded. I tried to intervene and facilitate a discussion. I failed, and I felt terribly about that. After that, we talked a lot. Joel thought seriously about giving up teaching, but he didn't. He came back to the classroom after the pandemic, and he was wildly successful. We would talk after class, and he was joyful. He even ended up creating a new class, Engineering a Remarkable Life. That class distilled everything Joel had learned from business and from life. It was about being deliberate in your decision-making, aligning your goals with your values, and dealing with setbacks and reversals in ways that position you to thrive. That class was a home run, and it would have been the subject of his next book. Joel himself lived a remarkable life. I will miss him, and I'm grateful to have known him.
Good morning. It's so great to see so many people here to celebrate someone who we all loved. The last conversation that I had with Joel was here in Memorial Church. He was giving a tour to a prospective student, and he brought that student here, as he often did with prospects. He said something to me like, "I always bring people to the church because it's the center of campus, and faith has always been my center." That was Joel. He didn't separate what he believed from how he lived. It showed up in the way he moved through the world, quietly, consistently, without ever needing to announce it. And what I remember most about that moment was not just what he said, but how he said it. Joel wasn't trying to impress me. He was simply being himself, grounded, thoughtful, and fully present. I used to teach an article in which the author wrote, "I've got a man you need to meet because I'm pretty sure Joel Peterson is the Mr. Rogers of Silicon Valley." And at first, that might sound a little puzzling. Silicon Valley isn't exactly known for gentleness. It rewards speed, sharp elbows, and bold claims. But if you knew Joel well, that comparison lands immediately. Fred Rogers built a career on a simple but radical idea. People matter most when they're treated with kindness, dignity, and care. And Joel believed that same thing. Now, we all know that Joel was incredibly successful and accomplished, but I was always equally impressed with how he showed up here at Stanford for his students and his colleagues. He listened in a way that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He gave advice, but he never imposed it. Joel understood something that many leaders miss. He used to say that cultures built on trust deliver the best results. Joel didn't just believe that, he built it everywhere he went. In an era that often celebrates the loudest voice, Joel showed us that quiet consistency could be just as powerful. Fred Rogers used to say that in times of difficulty, you should look for the helpers. Joel wasn't just somebody who looked for helpers. He was the helper. He helped our students trying to find their paths. He helped entrepreneurs navigating uncertainty. He helped colleagues facing hard decisions. And he helped friends who simply needed somebody to trust. Joel also had a remarkable ability to see potential in people before they saw it in themselves. He didn't just mentor people, he invested in them. He created space for them to grow, to take risks, to become more than they thought they could be. And here's the important part. He held them to a high standard because he believed in them. This combination of warmth and expectation is rare, but it's what made Joel's influence on all of us so enduring. In many ways, Joel redefined what leadership could look like. Not louder, not more forceful, but more human. Joel showed that you could be successful without losing your decency, that you could lead without dominating, and that you could build institutions and businesses and still take time to ask somebody how they're doing and really mean it. If there's a lesson to take from Joel's life, it's not just to admire those qualities, but it's for us to all practice them. We can all be a little bit more patient, more generous in this hurried world, because that's what Joel did every day. So yes, calling Joel the Mr. Rogers of Silicon Valley captures something essential, but it also understates him, because Joel didn't just remind us of those values, he showed us what it looks like to live them fully, consistently, and with quiet strength. And if we can all carry even a small part of that forward, then Joel's legacy will endure. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm grateful to have an opportunity to just share a few words about my friend and colleague, Joel Peterson. I was fortunate to know him for a number of years in various circumstances at Hoover, on the Stanford faculty, and Joel was just a rare combination of kindness and principle, all matched into one, always guided by his values. He was, of course, a stalwart of Stanford University and of the Hoover Institution. But that's because he understood and believed deeply in institutions. He didn't think of them as abstractions, but as communities of people that needed to be strengthened and guided and sustained for generations to come. And at Hoover, he did exactly that. As chair of Hoover's Board of Governors, Joel understood that leadership meant stewardship. He helped guide the institution during its centennial year, an occasion that invited both reflection on our founding purpose and confidence in the future. Joel believed deeply in Hoover's values to advance ideas that safeguarded freedom and expanded opportunity and secured peace because he thought that they were American values, and in fact, they were universal values. Joel brought to his role not only judgment and experience, but something that was not always easy: generosity of spirit. He believed that the people who made institutions strong needed to be encouraged, and so he encouraged our scholars and scholarship. He supported students. He strengthened and nurtured Hoover's relationship and partnership with Stanford. And he approached every responsibility with steadfastness and optimism and commitment. He was just so reliable. Education was, of course, a central thread running through his life. For more than 3 decades at the GSB, he shaped generations of students who went on to lead in business and in public life. But he taught them from a very special perch, because he taught them not just about success, he taught them about responsibility, and he modeled it for them. Now, I know about Joel's reliability and conviction and values personally, because I called on him so often. Indeed, when I was about to become Hoover's director, I called Joel. And I asked about the opportunities, and I asked about the challenges, and then I said, "Now, Joel, please be candid." There was a long pause. Before he could say anything, I said, "Okay, you're always candid." But in his candor, he pledged his loyalty and his support in meeting both those opportunities and those challenges. And I'm forever grateful that he was beside my side in that way. So we will remember Joel as a gifted and caring teacher, as an exceptional businessman, and as a generous mentor who made a career of lifting others up. He had vision and he had a capacity to bring ideas to life. But we also remember him today as a devoted family man. He deeply loved family. And so to Diana and to the Peterson family, please know how deeply grateful we are that you shared him with us. You shared his commitment and his time, and maybe even sometimes his frustration. Thank you for that gift. In times of mourning, I always hope and pray that for the family, the love that they experienced from him and gave to him will sustain, because those memories live on. When memorializing a life of consequence, and Joel's life was one of consequence, I'm always drawn to 2 Timothy and the Apostle Paul's words. I have fought the good fight. I have finished my race. Joel, this man of faith, of good humor, has now finished his race. He brought to it all of those wonderful values. And he ran that race with energy and with commitment and with grace. We will miss Joel, but he will live on through the many people and causes and institutions that he touched and shaped and sustained. God rest his soul.
I first met Joel Peterson during managing growing enterprises at the old business school building, a course taught to us in 2005 by Bob Joss and Jim Ellis. Joel was atypically in the back row, and after class he came up and paid me an unexpected compliment about a comment I made. I replied that I was humbled and honored to have the opportunity to meet him, and I was truly sorry I hadn't been able to take one of his classes as we wrapped up our 2 years at the GSB. Little did I know that that chance encounter sparked a relationship with one of my most important mentors. After our first conversation, I asked Joel if he would meet with me before year end to offer feedback on my startup. In his trademark generosity with students, he agreed and provided incisive feedback. While we both knew a wine startup wouldn't make sense for him to invest in, he welcomed staying in touch in case my next venture was more up his alley. While that was my only formal set of introductions and interactions with Joel as a student, I consider myself one of the most fortunate people on the planet to count Joel as a professor in life for the past 20 years. In reviewing our correspondences over the past 2 decades, emails, texts, manuscripts, and syllabi, I realized the impact and influence of his wisdom, guidance, pedagogy, family values on so many decisions of my life. I'll share just a few anecdotes with you today. When my husband Hal and I moved from Palo Alto back to Chicago 9 years ago to be closer to aging parents, I was working on a project in the Bay Area with the family office here that I did enjoy a lot, but with whom I had found myself at a fork in the road strategically. So I remember speaking to Joel on the floor outside of our offices at Stanford, asking his advice about whether to stick with the project when we moved back to Chicago or to use the geographic transition as an excuse to move on. Joel responded with some of his signature advice. People show you who they are, Alyssa. It's your job to pay attention. He continued, shared values are crucial to every partnership. Even that brief conversation gave me the clarity to make a meaningful and an immediate change. Years later, I was approached by an investment bank and other serial investors to raise a SPAC. Once again, I sought Joel's candid feedback. He introduced me to a senior advisor at Peterson Partners, Curtis Feeney, who became our co-board chair. And just like that, Joel's ability to connect like-minded people seemed both deeply thoughtful and potentially life-changing. Joel's willingness to lend his name and the Peterson Partners affiliation to so many of us former students was his extraordinary gift as a mentor. His continued sponsorship of so many of us allowed us to leverage his wingspan for the ascent of our entrepreneurial ideas. Over the past several years, I've had the distinct pleasure of inviting Joel as a guest speaker in my course at Booth on women as investors, directors, CEOs, and executives. In explaining to 65 eager MBAs why Joel's entrepreneurial leadership is on my syllabus, I share that he's an advocate for you even when you're not in the room. I cite quite explicitly the extraordinary women he has supported in roles of leadership and impact, including a few you've heard from today. And it's impossible for me not to share with those students how much I deeply admire his breathtakingly beautiful love story with Diana, his extraordinary children and grandchildren, and the droves of students he and the Peterson family have supported directly and indirectly through investment and mentorship, coaching and counsel over the years, like the great Topol brothers from whom you'll hear next. I even asked Joel for the Peterson family required reading list so that we can require it of our daughters as they enter our early teen years. In short, I share with my students that Joel was one of my most important mentors because I have met no one of greater moral fiber, stronger character, clearer values, whose choices I admire more than his. I have very few regrets in life. One of them, unequivocally though, remains not moving forward in co-teaching managing growing enterprises when Joel and I were invited to do so a few years ago. I ended up having to decline given the quantum of glass balls that I was then juggling. Joel told me his willingness to co-teach with me had no expiration date, and I wish that had been true. In closing, I am humbled and honored to have been given the opportunity to share how much Joel meant to me as a mentor, how much he inspired me as a person, particularly in a room filled with so many other former students and mentees with parallel stories. I will endeavor to honor Joel's legacy by attempting to provide a small fraction of the impact and inspiration Joel has in me and my past, present, and future MBAs.
Thank you, Alyssa. You captured so many of Joel's rare qualities so beautifully. I imagine everyone here knew Joel in some capacity. Many of you probably as students, like my brother Michael and myself, which means you know he wouldn't want us to only sing his praises or list his accomplishments, of which there were many, but instead, he would want us to reflect on the lessons we each learned from him. He would want us to examine his teachings and measure their impact on our lives, and equally importantly, the impact we have on others. If you're like me, most days while growing our startup, I hear Joel's voice in my head, saying things like, build a great culture, or keep people feeling like they're winning, or most importantly, nothing is more important than family, so don't drop the glass balls. Sometimes, something Joel said years ago suddenly makes sense, as if he were the GSB's Jedi Master Yoda. Basically, I have Joelisms rattling around up here all day. Chief among Joel's many great teachings was a gift he demonstrated both in and out of the classroom. No matter the circumstance, he always found a way to leave me with more confidence in myself. Whether it was a quick note sent following a call or his contributions during lengthy board meetings, Joel was always the believer and ever the sponsor, often ending his notes with chapeau or I am proud of you both. I will cherish those emails. Joel always told us to solve for how the other person is feeling, not for yourself. And when it came to teaching young minds about business and life, he eschewed the formality of balance sheet accounting or sales training, and instead chose to focus on what makes great leaders: empathy, understanding, patience. I frequently stop mid-conversation and hear Joel's voice. What are you solving for? How are you making this other person feel? Here's how Joel made me feel often: cared for, seen, inspired, and confident. Joel always emphasized the power of stories, so I will share one of mine. 3 years into building our company, Michael and I were on the verge of losing everything. A deal fell through, we had significant personal debt, and very little to show for it all. I did what many of you have done. I called Joel. I'll never forget what he said. Did you learn something? He asked. Well, yes, I did, I said. Could you have learned it doing anything else? He asked. No, I replied. He followed up with, do you still believe in what you're doing? 100%, I responded. And finally he said, then let's keep going. Consider this a cheap lesson. Trust me, I've had more expensive ones. And push on. You guys can do this. Believe in yourselves. And that was Joel's greatest gift, his ability to make people believe in themselves. Joel wouldn't just want us to stand here and say wonderful things about him, though he was a wonderful man. So I'll leave you with this. Remember a time when Joel helped you gain confidence in yourself, and go do that for someone else. Let's make him proud.
From the 25th chapter of Matthew. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered and fed thee, or thirsty and gave thee drink? When saw we thee a stranger and took thee in, or naked and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick or in prison and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me.
Good morning. Did any of the rest of you wonder what to wear today? I did, and then I thought, wait a minute, this is Joel Peterson's memorial service. What else are you going to wear but a suit and tie? I remember for many years I looked for a set of pajamas in the form of a suit and tie so that he could wear those at home as well. This was a man that loved his suit and tie, so I am in a suit and actually one of his ties today. I want to thank the musicians for that beautiful music, including my mom. I want to thank each of the speakers. What wonderful tributes, and for sharing something, capturing something very real about Joel. And with people like this speaking, what do I have to add? Well, as his oldest son, and perhaps his first remedial student, I can give you a view from inside the house, when sometimes he did not have a suit and tie on. And the first thing that I want to let all of you know is that you meant a lot more to him than you know. Much more. I think many of you have heard about his infamous weekly email to the family. He was religious. I mean, he almost never missed. I recall once or twice he missed. I immediately called him to see if he was still alive. And sometimes these were very short emails. He would remark on the weather and maybe give a jab to a political figure on the left. After all, this is Joel we are speaking about. But most weeks, he wrote about at least one of you. Your names, your stories, what you were building, what you were wrestling with, what you'd overcome. I also had the stretching and sometimes maddening privilege of being his partner over the last 15 years. And as a result, I'd speak to him every couple of days. And it was the same story. He would talk about one of you. Someone who'd reached out, someone at a crossroads, someone seeking to figure something out. What was amazing to me was how those moments moved him. He might be talking about Alyssa or the Topol brothers or Condi or Andy Dunn, who'd be here if it weren't for a surgery happening right now. And he might get choked up. He loved to be associated with you, with this university, with this community. He loved to be useful to the meaningful work that you are doing. If you asked for time, he made the time. It was his favorite thing to do. And when he came home, it turns out that he saved the evidence. As we have gone through his things, we have found hundreds and hundreds of saved memories. Just about every thank you note he ever received. Photos, name tags, programs, little mementos that most people would have thrown away. He kept them. I think he kept them because they helped answer a question he carried his whole life. Did it matter? Did I help? Did I do enough? A number of years ago, he came to a memorial service here in this church, and he called me right after. He said, "Can you imagine what a dream that would be?" He ended up going to a few more, and each time he'd call me and said, "How is something like that even possible?" He didn't believe that he could be worthy of a gathering like this, but he couldn't stop hoping. So I'll say this plainly. Dad, they came. The second thing I want to talk to you about is this. Joel really loved winning. This probably comes as a complete surprise to nobody. And if I start to tell stories as his oldest son about how much he loved winning, we will be here all day. But over time, that love of winning became something deeper, a lifelong question. If you spent time with him, I'm sure you heard the question again and again and again. What is winning? It sounds simple. What is winning? But it gets harder the longer you sit with it. He knew the first answers, and he knew many of you would achieve them. As President Levin mentioned, that last course he was working on, he titled Engineering a Remarkable Life. Right at the center of that class was this question: what is winning really? For him, that question became more than philosophical. It became spiritual. Joel believed deeply that he would one day stand before his Maker and account for his life. And he knew that it would not be measured by what he built, but by how he treated people, by whether he used what he had, his time, his energy, his influence, to lift others. We just heard Sarah read from the Gospel of St. Matthew. Inasmuch as you have done it unto the least of these, you have done it unto me. In his way, and imperfectly, that belief drove his life. Why he took the call, why he made the introduction, why he cared, why he worked so hard. In his final days, after his stroke, I saw something I'll never forget. Everything else fell away. He had the use of the right side of his face and his left arm and his mind, sometimes. And all he wanted was to gather the people that he loved. He would reach for us and express love as best he could, one by one, until he would get so exhausted he would pass out. And then he would wake up and do it again and again. And there was peace, and then he was gone. I had never considered this might be the true answer to that question. What is winning? Maybe that was his final lesson. So as we sit here today, maybe we sit with that question just a little bit longer. What is winning? Past the first answer, even past the second. What is the point of any achievement if it costs integrity? What is the point of power if it doesn't become stewardship? What is the point of success if those closest to you pay too high a price? What is the point of gaining the whole world if you lose your soul? I miss my dad, but I can feel him here. And I am so grateful to all of you for being such a large part of what mattered most to him, and for loving him back.
This morning, my goodness, I am full of these stories and a little bit off my game this morning. I'm so touched by what was said. This morning, friends, this morning, we have shared not only our grief and loss with one another, but also the joy and the love and the delight that moves us outside of ourselves, so it is hard sometimes to be present. We've shared what we have known in and through Joel. And here is the faith claim it is true that he lives on. He lives on not just in these memories and these stories that we have shared with one another, but he lives on in the concrete ways in which we now live our lives differently because we have known him. Isn't that true? It is that ripple effect that has impacted so many, that ripple effect that allows him to live on and on and on. In the way he led a deeply principled life marked by respect and generosity of spirit, of shared values and faith. The way in which he modeled the very best of teaching excellence, bringing his full self into the classroom, being willing to struggle through difficult moments in order to become a better teacher, mentor, instructor, that trademark generosity that he had with his students. He lives on in the ways in which we listen to one another, making them feel as if they are the only person in the room, and if there is no end to time at all. He lives on in the ways in which we too weave inseparably together not just what we believe, but how we live. The way in which he modeled for us what it meant to be grounded, thoughtful, fully present, the Mr. Rogers of Silicon Valley. Joel lives on. He lives on in the way he taught us how to believe in institutions. Institutions as living communities of people that build a legacy. He lives on in the way in which he embodied a steadfastness and optimism, a commitment modeling responsibility and reliability, a radical candor wed with undying loyalty. Joel lives on when we live our lives that way. In that uncanny ability he had to link like-minded people together. His willingness to be unfailingly supportive no matter what, advocating for you even when you were not in the room. Even when you had failed and no longer believed in yourself, he believed in you. What a gift. Joel lives on, maybe in those endless Joelisms, but really those Joelisms are lessons that he taught us about how to live our life, never letting the glass balls fall. Joel lives on when we treat others the way he treated us, making us all feel cared for, seen, inspired, confident. The way in which he never failed to connect those he loved most, whether through weekly emails in which he detailed the things and the people and the projects that mattered most to him, or the way he savored memories, tucking away little mementos, really as a way to answer life's most persistent question: what is winning? Friends, Joel lives on this day in and through us. You've heard the stories. Now is your time to live those lessons and to be the people that Joel knew you to be. He knew you to be exactly like him. And I think, actually, he believed you to be better than he was. He saw that in you, and he calls you to that this day. And so as we close this memorial, I invite you to join me in prayer in an ancient rite of return. Will you pray with me? Gracious and loving God, we give you thanks for the life of your servant Joel. Before he was ours, he was yours. For all that he has given us to make us who we are, for that of him which lives and grows in each of us, and for his life and your love that will never end, we give you thanks. As we offer Joel back into your arms, we ask that you might comfort us in our loneliness, strengthen us in our weakness, and give us the courage to face the future unafraid. Surround those who mourn with your comfort. Steady us, O God, with your peace, and strengthen our hope in the joyful reunion that lies ahead. Draw those of us who remain in this life closer to one another. Make us faithful to serve one another, and grant that we might share with others the joy and love we knew in and through Joel. Amen. Friends, it is true that Joel lives on in each and every one of us because we live our lives differently for having known him. May his memory be a blessing, calling us toward lives of courage, generosity, and compassion. Go forth this day in the peace that passes all understanding, held in the love of God and strengthened by the hope that we are bound beyond this life, knit together in love forever and ever. Amen. May you go in peace.